everybody, and welcome to another edition of Stephen Squibb's special Delta Sigma Pi campaign edition. Today, we have an incredible guest, one of the two candidates for Grand President. That's right, El Jefe of the fraternity. And we are very welcome to have Paul Carpinella. Paul, are you with us?
I am, Eddie. Thanks for the warm welcome. No pressure being called El Jefe there.
Well, let me ask you a bunch of questions so our
Sure.
listeners could get to know you a little better, understand your viewpoints, and whether or not you're going to get their vote for GP.
Sounds great.
Now, you have been volunteering for Delta Sigma Pi for a really long time, and I know you have a very active family life. When I had two young ones, it was very challenging to split that time. Why are you running at this time in your life?
Yeah, great question. Well, one, I think it's certainly I have the work life and home life balance perspective fairly caught. And I think certainly, from a skill set perspective, it's also the right time for me to run. So from a family perspective, my boys are older. They're going to be 11 and my twins are going to be 9. So at this point, we've kind of figured out what does the carpool shuttle look like? What do the sports activities look like? But then more importantly, we come from a small town that's pretty close and we have a fairly big village. So we are, my wife and I are pretty well rehearsed. And if one of us is traveling for work or volunteer things or the fraternity, we have 3 or 4 folks that we can call on for, the shuttles to bring people the sporting events and things like that. So certainly that's got the balance piece worked out. From a skill set perspective, I think now has never been more important for someone like my skill set to actually be Grand President. My background is, I've been volunteering obviously for 18 years in the fraternity and literally at the same time working my way up through the marketing discipline, mostly for tech startup companies and mostly in the digital space. And also volunteering for, local soccer clubs, Cub Scouts, things of that nature. So I have a really well-rounded understanding of, what good looks like, what things could be, tweaked from place to place to do well. But more importantly, as a marketer, my big part of my role is making sure that people feel like they are part of the process, making sure that people feel like they know what's going on. And then more importantly, being able to be agile and listen and make sure that, marketing campaigns are well run and well oiled based on what the sales needs and what our customers need and things like that. So, those are a couple of reasons, why I'm running.
Speaking of marketing, I know you are a marketer. That's your vocation. And you've been doing that pretty much your entire professional career, focusing on tech startups. How does that give you a leg up in the race, in your opinion?
Yeah, so as a marketers, a big part of our survival is to be able to listen and be able to take in a lot of different viewpoints and then to be able to quickly action and interpret what we're hearing into marketing campaigns, into events and things like that. So I think that's certainly a skill that we need right now. I think, a lot of what you're hearing from collegians and alumni is, they want to be more involved with the process. They want to be able to offer their feedback and they want to be able to help and be part of the solution. I think as a marketer, that is literally what we have to do day in and day out to make sure, one, we're keeping the sales team well oiled by providing them leads and keeping our companies, being well aware in the market with good programs and things like that. The other piece is because I've worked in mostly tech startups, I've literally had an opportunity to experience all points of a business. And because I usually sat very close to our customer success teams, I was also able to hear, how do you make tech products sticky within an organization? How do you think about strategies to make, to solve difficult business problems? And then how do you sell that throughout the organization? And I think that's something that we're definitely going to need now as we kind of look to, make some changes. Now, I don't think we need drastic changes, but certainly do make some changes around communication, around agility. They'll kind of give us a head start here. And I think it's important that you have that mindset going in, because certainly, August 15th, a lot of schools are already in session, or a good part of the country is already in session, and a lot of the rest of the schools are starting within the next week or so. So it'll be important that the person getting this role really understands how to move quickly from day one, because we have a lot of big things that we need to get done Most importantly, helping chapters transition to coming back into a physical life, or somewhat more of a normal, and literally kind of retraining our officers how to work together and our chapters how to work together physically.
In addition, Paul, you have a very heavy communications background. What improvements do you think you can make in that area with Delta Sigma Pi?
Yeah, and I think a big part of communication is really putting everyone on the same plane. And what I mean by that is, there are a lot of people who could provide solutions. So a big piece here is, what I want to do as Grand President is literally have the chapter officers being well connected up with our board of directors. So a couple of ideas around that is sort of create a big brother type system where there'd be board members who would be subject matter experts in finance and communication, and things like that. And while we're doing that, that not only kind of helps the board of directors communicate what some of the issues they are looking to achieve, with chapter champions, but it also gives the collegians themselves an opportunity to offer their real-time feedback. So I think that's one in terms of, kind of bringing our officers and our board of directors closer to one another. Another piece of the communication here is, there's not one channel that tends to get the most engagement. And what that means is people are consuming information in so many different ways. I mean, look at this. We have a podcast, which this is the first time in any election cycle for Delta Sigma Pi that we've seen this actually happen. And there'll probably be a good amount of folks who are going to use this as a vehicle to understand the candidates really well. We have Facebook, which I'm sure a lot of different folks are going to be able to use. And we just have short form video. So I think being able to really, utilize the different communication vehicles a lot better is going to help us, one, better communicate our ideas from a board of director perspective, better solicit feedback, and then more importantly, be able to provide the information to our diverse sets of brothers in the diverse ways that they want to get the information.
I saw the Cincinnati Alumni chapter do a great panel for the Northeastern PVPs, and I agree. I think we're going to see all kinds of innovations with the new nominations rules, and it's kind of exciting to be a part of that. I was a little surprised at the last board meeting when the Zoom information contained directions that observers should not be taking notes to share. That does not seem consistent with good communication. What do you think of that practice?
Yeah, I think the greater point there is being able to get the minutes from the board meeting out quicker. I think the bigger issue there is more around ensuring that the messages that are going out are consistent and kind of accurate with what was shared. So obviously by having, a few different viewpoints go out, that could certainly help cause confusion, things like that. So I think in general, the bigger issue there is, being more agile in the way that we're communicating out. Maybe it is if a board meeting's on a Saturday, it's, the communication director is literally typing those notes and getting that fraternity minutes document out Saturday night, Sunday night, as it might be. So I think that's a bigger piece. I understand the concept of wanting to control the story, so to speak, if that makes sense. But in order to be able to do that agilely, you just have to be quick in getting it out. And then what that enables folks to do is, if they were at the board meeting, be able to share a perspective to, Eddie, you could share some perspective to collegians in terms of what you heard if they're coming back on Sunday and saying, hey, how did this conversation go? Or, can you help me understand what were some of the things that are in this, 10-word bullet point considering this topic?
I took a look at your platform in the Beacon, and it seems a major part of it is bringing alumni and collegians together. What kind of ideas do you have to accomplish that goal?
Yeah, there are a few different ideas that we have here. So one is a perspective of we have so many diverse brothers in terms of professional backgrounds. So one thing we're looking to do is as we look at ways to improve our communication, as we look at ways to improve our technology and our governance, bringing those experts into task forces to provide some guidance, but also having collegians there on those task forces to provide some of the real-time user feedback. So then our alumni can kind of provide their expertise of, oh, this is kind of how, this is some of the reasons why it's set up this way. But if this is the issue that we're hearing from you, here are some things that we could suggest back to central office and to vendors to help smooth that process out. So that's one. The other piece as well is, having the corresponding chapter officers, so our vice president of alumni relations or vice president of community service, serve on regional committees for those positions. And then that would bubble up to, alumni-based committees at the provincial level and at the national level. And I think that does a couple of things. From a leadership perspective, now you're giving more than just presidents that opportunity to build their leadership skills and then truly have that, what does it mean to make this decision, or what goes into making this decision. But then more importantly, now our experts in the field, who are our chapter officers, are providing some feedback and working with our alumni to really help get programming there be a lot more concise to them. And obviously you have the leadership building in the pipeline. And the final part here, part of my technology vision is to truly create somewhat of a LinkedIn or a Facebook for Delta Sig. So one way where we're able to get a lot of alumni providing their contact information and raising their hand to say, yes, I want to offer mentor advice. Yes, I want to offer professional advice, and making it so easy for the collegians to find it. One of the things we're doing from the National Alumni Development Committee is starting to pilot some of that of, if we ask alumni to help in low intensity ways, i.e. reviewing a resume, sitting on an alumni panel, would they be more apt to do it? We've been getting some great response, and the collegians who are doing it are appreciating it. And I think that's going to kind of help. Now if you're wanting a resume reviewed, you could easily find someone who might be, majoring or working within supply chain. And if I'm in Boston, California, now I could actually be connected to that person a lot quicker. And it's a different perspective than if I just went to my school's alumni network. And I think that's going to help start, strengthening that bond, one, getting different perspectives from professionals and collegians, and then more importantly, just bring us all closer together.
Since you brought up tech, I am a tech geek, and I love the implementation of technology in business and organizations. And I see it's in your platform. What other suggestions would you have for implementing technology or improving it within Delta Sigma Pi?
Perfect. I'm a tech geek as well, Eddie. I manage our customer relationship management and marketing automation systems and work. So I'm always kind of looking at how can we kind of get those systems better talking and do some really cool automation, things like that. So there are a few pieces here. One is from the leadership perspective of creating basically a hub for our chapter officers. And what that hub is meaning is using the hub as a two-way communication piece, so that as officers need reminders, or as we're promoting events that are specific for officers, they could go within that hub, get the notifications that are relevant to them, and be able to action it. The other piece as well is, I think it's great that a lot of regions, a lot of officer groups have their own Facebook groups, their own Slack channels and things like that. The problem is it's their own. So it tends to get lost in transition of officer groups. We as a national fraternity are losing a lot of those best practices, and it's creating a bunch of inefficiencies. So along with that kind of improving leadership tech is, better using our app, maybe getting a national subscription to a thing like Slack or Discord, and that would all be managed centrally. So that way there's no confusion if I'm a new officer where I need to go. If we're looking to improve officer manuals from a central office perspective, we can review the Slack channels to see what common questions are being popped up and put them there. And then more importantly, as we're transition officers, they're going to be able to get that information a lot quicker. And then we kind of touched upon for the general membership, some ways to improve it through the creation of LinkedIn for Delta Sigs and things of that nature as well. But the key there is really to ask the right questions. And to do that is going back to a bit around how I mentioned bringing alumni and collegians back, is bringing back our alumni experts in the tech fields to offer us, how to build that roadmap that's right for us, based on feedback from collegians there. So it's a nice kind of well-rounded platform that isn't necessarily overspending, but making sure that we're getting the right features and technology platforms in to solve the right problems that would enable us basically to go to a 2.0 a lot quicker than educated guesses.
I dig it, and I could see how that could help officer transition, where if you have a bad transition, all of that previous institutional knowledge that has been created and built is lost. And to have some uniform way to pass that on and maybe to even access others, I think that would really be helpful. So I like that idea a lot. being a past grant or being grand president is a time commitment. You have your 2-year term. Usually, the deal is you're going to do 2 terms if elected as grand president. So that's 4 years. And then there's past grand president, which is still a board position, and usually is another additional 4 years. So that's a 8-year commitment on this path. Can you tell all of our listeners if you're ready for that kind of a commitment?
Yeah, well, technically it's 9, because certainly this year isn't this year isn't a cakewalk either. And actually 10, because certainly I was trying to make sure I was ready and that my vision was right, and getting advice on how to do the job well. So it's literally going to encompass my entire 40s. But that being said, I've been volunteering since 2 days after I graduated. So really, my entire adult life has been spent volunteering. And at this point, I really understand it is as much a part of me as much as the family and things like that. So yes, I do. I am ready for the next 9 years, truthfully, and for the years that come after that. And I've been doing it by one. Kind of why I'm saying it's the right time. Like I have the family life kind of understood. Yes, we're going into the high school years, but it's not as I feel like we've done the hard stuff, or I know it gets different, as I'm sure you'd attest to that. But no, and my wife and I certainly have it down where we're reviewing calendars every Sunday night to know what drop-offs look like, who has meetings when, who could do bedtime, and it's something that we're ready for. It's something honestly that we sort of don't really know any way different. So there's no use really stopping now. You kind of go forward and move forward to something that we know how to do. I think pretty well. My wife might disagree with that sometimes, depending on the week, but definitely ready for the next 9 years.
So 2 people running, maybe more because we're early in.
Mhm.
Why should you be the one that's elected?
Yeah, I really think I have the background and knowledge that we need right now. Coming from a tech startup world, we've had to be agile. I've had to transform a lot. And we're really at a point in Delta Sigma Pi's history where we need to go to 3.0, or at least to the next generation. And we need to get there quickly, because there's going to be not only a lot of needing to look forward, but there's going to be a lot of getting information quickly, getting everyone on the same page quickly, but then more importantly, understanding how to ask the right questions and to move forward at real time. And I think that's what I excel at. As regional vice president, as provincial vice president, I was always able to do, and even as, committee chair, or chair of 2 national committees, I was always able to lead teams that were able to do things in the moment with the eye of how do we move this forward. So for example, as New England regional vice president, we had regional leads and we had regional officer meetings. And this was back in 2003 to 7. There's still a few folks that went through that process that are still involved today at pretty high levels, whether it's official volunteer positions or not. And being able to pull against that experience, I think, is something that you need. And more importantly, I've been through 4 acquisitions, so I understand how to transform companies on the fly while still being able to move things forward. And I think that's what we need.
My biggest lessons in life has come from my failures. What obstacles can you articulate that you have overcome in Delta Sigma Pi?
Yeah, I think there've been a few. I think one that comes to mind is probably around the Chi chapter. Chi is a pretty storied chapter, and as I was starting my time as PVP, they were struggling. They were down to just a few members, and really my entire, I think, first 2 years, my first 2 terms, was working literally hand in hand with the RVP and with them, having weekly, monthly phone calls with them, kind of listening to stakeholders from the alumni perspective to really try to keep them moving forward and alive. End of the day, I think we probably worked a bit because of the chapter, and it's a hard decision to want to close a chapter. I think we really put in a lot of extra work in there that probably hurt some other areas, certainly for that region, as well as for some of my provincial goals. End of the day, we did have to close them, but I probably would have made that decision quicker. And I think probably there's been some, I move quick. Specifically here, as we look at some things, even as we've been doing a part of the National Alumni Development Committee of, trying to do a lot more webinars and trying to do more, personalized session based on functions. We put a lot on the calendar, and we put, I think, a lot of stress, a lot of time and executing things that we thought would work well. And they've worked, but I think not to the scale that we would want them to work. And we're using the learnings there. We understand that, if we're trying to run some career panels or resume reviews, better entice the VPARs by saying, helping us with this, with help with your CMP, engaging Shanda and the folks who are working on the educational calendars a lot quicker. So that way we could take a more holistic view of, here are some of the sessions that we think would be good for VPARs and young alumni. And then that way, you have less kind of events on the calendar, but more impactful. So I think those are a couple of the failure points. And then from a career perspective, I think there were times when younger in my career where just having those first leadership positions professionally, I tended to have I think overconfidence or overzealousness of it's my way or the highway type feeling. And I came to realize that, that really didn't help anyone. Honestly, it kept me up at night. It made me look like a bit more of an evil person. I realized when I changed my tone, when I changed my outlook on things, and which is a big reason why I keep saying collaboration, ask, and feedback. And when I came into situations with hypothesis of, here's what I think the go forward should be, let me engage the stakeholder in terms of getting their feedback in it, expressing my ideas, and then combining our two ideas, tended to get stuff off the ground a lot quicker, tended to be a lot more successful, and we've had a lot more fun doing it and developed a lot more friendships. So those are, a few of the failures. I'm sure I've had a few more, but a few of the big ones that come to mind.
Well, let's talk about some successes. And Delta Sigma Pi is an awesome organization and is diverse, and it makes us better business leaders. At least it has for me. Where do you think are the current areas that Delta Sigma Pi is really excelling right now?
Yeah, I really have to give it to a lot of the VPARs out there. We've had a lot from the national committee is really about how do we better engage alumni from the national perspective. And there's a lot of VPARs who've gone out on their own, saw this as a problem, and worked on ways to really bring their alumni back in. So there are a lot of chapters that are doing mentorship programs, really light programs that, they're just asking for help and working on matching those individuals. And it's having some big impacts. I've seen it, Cleveland is working with one of the chapters. I believe it's Theta Kappa is doing it, and they're totally pumped and they're totally excited to work there. There's another chapter in Arizona doing the same thing, Gamma Psi, and they're saying, I spoke to someone yesterday of how excited the collegians are to work with these folks, and how excited the alumni are to help out. So I think those are a few things. I think we're really working hard from the virtual education perspective to really hit the webinar programming. And I think we're taking a lot of lessons from a national perspective against that. And it's exciting to hear, the Professional Development Committee and Shanda kind of think about, all right, here are some ways we could, make these a bit more personalized and make these a bit more hybrid as we come into the new normal, which I think are really great. And the COI committee, I have to say, I love that. I think that's an amazing idea, because one of the things I've seen work well in the professional world and the tech world are customer advisory boards, where we could bounce ideas off customers, get feedback on the way our products are working. And I think that COI committee is an amazing way to do that with some of our most engaged brothers. So kudos there. And this is just looking from afar at that. Obviously, I'm not involved with the COI committee, but I think it's a really great program, and kudos to the designers of that.
And if you're on IG, you got to check out the COI Instagram account. It's pretty fun.
Awesome.
They're doing a great job with it. So going back to the other spectrum, what are some issues that you see our current leadership that could use improvement, if any?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the ways we're working from a communication perspective, I think had worked for us in the past. Things like email communication and things like, maybe monthly communications were something I think that were good before we really got into a lot of the digital age. And I think really what we need to look at is, how we better, I pointed this a bit more. So how can we actually have news bites of decisions that are being made that are out there very quickly, but more important, I think the biggest piece here is how can we now bring everybody to the same plane where it's not board of directors, provincial leaders, chapter officers. It's we as a coordinated leadership team between all three levels. And I think that's the shift in philosophy that we need to get to. So as leaders, I think, the collegians out there have never been more connected than they are now and never had an opportunity to use their voice, and they want to use it. And they want to be able to give their feedback quickly. So by doing things like, having, regional committees that roll all up to the national committees, having Big Brother board of directors for specific areas like finance, community service, pledge education, we'll actually be able to give each of those officers some real-time feedback to a centralized board of director person. And then also engage folks in conversation more. I think the one thing we can't be afraid of is having conversations. And even if it's a town hall that's then separated by a 15-minute breakout where you're getting all the pledge educators together to talk about the pledge program, where you're getting the VPARs together to talk about foundation chapter champion programs and fraternity programs looking to engage alumni and really kind of closing the loop there. I think that'll help us. So I think I think it's more of a switch in mentality and philosophy to agility, to bringing more people into decision-making and into the holistic team can have some massive improvements as we move forward.
I have been having discussions with past grand presidents and delegates who have, quite frankly, expressed a concern about the current leadership's ability to be transparent. How else can we help fix that problem?
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think there's malicious intent in that, to be honest. I think a lot of it goes back to the way that we're communicating. One of the things that I think we're seeing as a big issue is for collegians to be part of the decision-making process. And I think that's something that's just not as active in some decisions as we would like. I mean, I think if you look at the pledge education program piece there, while collegians were involved in those decisions, the process itself took 3 years or multiple years to roll out. And there wasn't necessarily good, or maybe there could have been better ways that we were engaging our leadership or providing talking points with our regional vice presidents throughout that process, more quickly answer the questions, but also get the collegians involved. One of the things I've been joking with the Alumni Development Committee is, needing to whip, as in like the congressional whip process on some of our proposals. So having those conversations, before recommendations are made. I mean, there's still going to be substantive conversations, but I think it gets us to at least some starting points a bit quicker. But again, I think it all goes back to a communication model that might have worked in years past that isn't scalable. I think at this point.
Talking about something fun, what is your favorite Delta Sig memory?
Yeah, so my very first provincial council as provincial vice president was Annapolis, Maryland in February 2010, which was also the weekend of Snowmageddon up and down the East Coast. So we got the conference in. So we did, a majority of the folks were able to get in before the snow started. But that was just so much fun because, as I was able to go up to the podium to talk about, here's what's coming next. By the way, the snowstorm's currently in Columbus, Ohio. And, we see, kind of be able to make it a joke. But obviously the filet buffet at the banquet was amazing. I don't think I've ever had so much steak in my life. It was beautiful. But the best part of it was, the storm had really mostly been an overnight storm on Saturday. And walking out to the parking lot on Sunday, it was literally chapters helping chapters shovel out their cars, providing shovels and moving. And I just sat back and it was just an amazing experience, running that. And Shanda was amazing to kind of keep that moving. But, the passion that the folks who were there really had during it and the fun we had, and then just to see the brotherhood kind of come through was amazing. I'd say from a less excited point, one of the special memories I'll have as a Delta Sig, and you asked for one, I always give two, it's an Italian thing, was actually the funeral for Nick Steinkraus, and how many fraternity people came back, and more importantly, how many collegians came back. They were literally, Nick came from a big family. There were more collegians of very diverse backgrounds, where some of those, that was their first time in a Catholic church. And they're just one, it was the impact he had, but to get to a point where someone was giving back to that, so many people, was just amazing. And then afterwards we had, for folks who wanted, we just had a little bit of a pass the gavel for him, and to hear how many people he touched across the country was really cool. I knew I shouldn't have mentioned this one because I knew it was going to make me cry, but I think it was, when you think of the impact that one person can have in so many lives, I think that's why we do this. And I was happy. I mean, Nick is a big part for me, and I was happy for him in that situation, that he was able to get a lot of the respect from the people that he loved the most in this organization. So that was touching.
I think many brothers share your view on that. Paul, if people wanted to find out more about your campaign, where would they go?
Yeah, a couple of spots. They could go to paul4gp.com. So that's paul4gp.com. I have a Facebook group, Paul Carpinella 4 Delta Sigma Pi Grand President, or on Instagram, Paul4GP are the handle. So a couple of spots to get me.
Well, to end this question or interview on something a little bit more light,
Yep.
Tell us something about Paul Carpinella that not too many people know about.
Yeah, so I think I'm a 5-star Michelin chef. So as a result of that, there's a lot of experimenting in the kitchen. Some have been hits, most of them have been misses, but my kids love Top Chef and Master Chef. So we get a lot. I've had to pass the apron back to my kids and pack up my knife set way too more than I would have liked. But it's a little bit of a passion to me. I had one boss who was old Italian guy, and he just loved to talk about his Sunday dinner. So I picked it up from there, and I just love doing it.
So you cooked in your own pasta or what?
Oh, I'm not that creative, but it's, making some new sauces, some experimentation of, my wife over here shaking her head, getting some different vegetable combinations, some different stir fries and things like that. Sunday dinner is my favorite, getting the meatballs all together and, getting that sauce going, starting pretty early.
Did you mention Hillary is in the room?
She is. Yeah, she is.
So, well, since she's in the room, can I ask her some questions about your campaign?
Absolutely. Come on over, Hillary. I'm gonna go relax now. I'll let her be grilled.
Well, Paul, thanks for your participation.
Oh, you're welcome. Oh, I've been told I need to stay, so I'm gonna take out the earbuds.
How are you?
Good. So Hillary, it's not often I get to interview the spouse of a candidate. This is the first time, but since you're in the room, I'm going to take the opportunity. You have been on this journey with Paul for now 18 years, if my math is right.
Yep.
What has that meant to you?
I mean, I think that I've never known Paul as anything but a Delta Sig. So I think that, from the very first time that we ever spoke was after the first installation he did. And so that was all he talked about. And I was like, all right, well, this is interesting. We'll see where this goes. And so I think that to see how he's grown as a Delta Sig and as, just a human in general has been truly amazing. And I think that it's, this journey is part of our journey. And so I don't have an exact answer, I guess, except that his Delta Sig journey has become my Delta Sig journey.
Well, speaking of that, our journey, how has Paul specifically made you and the kids a part of that experience?
So this is a little easier for me to answer in terms of myself than the kids, because his first grand chapter was my first grand chapter. And
that was Palm Springs, right?
It was.
That was fun.
It was fun.
That was a great one.
We'd been dating a few months, and he was like, hey, I'm going to California this summer for Delta Sigma Pi, and it's a big party and conference, and do you want to come? And I was like, I don't know anybody but you and a few people that I've met just from hanging out together, but sure, I'll go. What do I have to lose, And to see that brotherhood that, I mean, up till that point, it had been really more abstract to me. And so to see that was like, wow. And to see how everybody was so inclusive of what I considered myself as an outsider at that point was just amazing. Nobody even questioned that why people were there who weren't Delta Sigs. And it was just so, I don't know, amazing. And now the kids, you know, like our oldest son's godparents are the Chicheris, and we are their oldest daughter's godparents. And so it's part of our family. It really is. And so the twins' first Congress was last August in Atlanta. Because prior to that, we were like, Congress, we took Isaac to the very first one when he was a baby. And after that, we said, no, Congress is sacred. We're not bringing the kids to that anymore. And then Atlanta came along and everyone was talking about bringing their kids. So we were like, all right, let's dive in. We're going to try it. We're going to try it with the 3 kids. So that was the twins' first Congress. We brought my mom as a babysitter, and she kind of became the grandma of all of the next generation. And just, they made their own friends. I mean, they still talk to kids that they haven't seen since August of 2019 on Facebook Messenger Kids and all, you know, oh, I got to talk to Tyler, or I got to go, you know, oh, today's Nolan's birthday. And I'm like, you haven't seen Nolan in a year and a half. How do you, it's his birthday, Mom. I'm like, okay. I mean, so I think that just bringing them in with the other kids and bringing, you know, just involving them has been so great. And they've made friendships that I hope will last as long as the friendships we've made.
Was elected, that makes you first lady of Delta Sigma Pi.
Yep.
Would you have any personal plans or to contribute?
I mean, I think just more kind of nothing concrete yet. I mean, this is still a long way away in my mind, even though it's not really. But I think just getting spouses involved is important so that they can see and understand how much this means, one, to their spouse, but also how much it can mean to them, and how much, you know, we can also make a difference. It's not just the brothers, or the collegiately initiated brothers that make the difference. We can all make a difference, and we all have something that we can contribute.
And if Paul is elected, it's probably, as he says, 9-10 year plus commitment. I know you've been doing this for a while, but being a GP is a little different than being a PVP, because you have a whole lot more territory to cover, and it's certainly a lot more travel once we get back to the new normal. Are you ready to put up with that?
I think so. I mean, we've been talking about Paul running for GP since he became an RVP in 2003. So this was never really a question of if in my mind, it was a question of when, and, you know, what our life would look like at any given point when that were to possibly happen. And so, you know, I think Paul has really done a great job of balancing everything, his profession, his professional life, his fraternal life, his family life. I mean, truly, I tell people all the time, he is a way better dad than I am a mom. And there's, I mean, he gets on the floor and he plays with the kids. And when he's playing with them, he's not doing anything else. When I'm playing with them, I'm like, oh, I have to do this and that and this and that and this and that. And yeah, let's play go fish, but wait, I need to do this. And he just literally sits down and plays the game. And it's just so amazing. And so he's really good at focusing on what he's doing at any given time. And I think that is going to be really helpful.
Well, both of you for your time today. I'm going to ask you one more trick question,
Uh-oh.
Hillary, if you'll put up with us. But these are the fun ones. And I asked Paul this question too. Tell us something that not too many people know about Paul. Tell us a fact or a fun tidbit.
I learned this about Paul really early on in our relationship. You know, we met right after college. And so I didn't know a lot about his childhood right away. It wasn't like we knew each other as kids or anything like that. And his dream as a kid was to be general manager for the Boston Red Sox. And so, I mean, I learned that pretty quickly, you know, big Red Sox fan. And so one time I was at his apartment, or he was in the kitchen or something, and I look over and he's like going like that, and I was like, what are you doing? And he goes, practicing my pitching. I'm like, you don't have a ball? I don't. And to this day, sometimes I'll just walk by and he'll just be practicing his pitching. So he's really a little sad that the boys haven't taken to baseball, but
Kids have a habit of not
Yeah.
doing what their parents like. That's the biggest thing I
Yeah.
learned as a parent. Well, Paul and Hillary, thank you so much for your time today and your willingness to discuss some of these issues, and some of them are difficult questions. And I just want to wish you the best of luck on this
Thank you,
campaign.
Eddie. I
great.
appreciate
Thanks
it.
so much.